Blake, you are indeed a tragic character. But it isn't entirely your fault. The things that have brought you to where you are now were all laid in stone many, many years ago. Hey everybody out there in YouTube land, Jake of the OneManBand is back again, giving you guys a RWBY theory. Now, back when episode 4 of volume 4 came out, Menagerie, it got me thinking. After I had done the review, I really started to crunch down and wonder, what was the story behind Gira Belladonna? Why would Blake leave her family when they seem so loving? And why would Gira leave the White Faunus in the first place? So many questions, so many things that I wanted to understand, and mostly due to the fact that I wanted to understand Blake a little bit more. So, what was I to do? I went back to the beginning, if you would say. I went back and watched episodes both from Volume 1 and Volume 2, trying to understand where Blake was coming from. Why did she say certain things? Why does she think a certain way? And why has she continued to think this way and be as stubborn as she is? And the conclusion I came to honestly quite surprised me, and brought a lot of new light to Blake's character. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In order to understand Blake, we have to go back. Way back. We don't have to go back quite as far as the Great War, but we have to go back to the Faunus Rights Revolution, aka the Faunus War. Now, we know that after the Great War, Faunus were granted equal rights as citizens of Remnant, and were also gifted Menagerie due to their efforts that they had during the war. But of course, Menagerie had a very small area that could be settled, and was full of very deadly creatures. So, although a lot of Faunus relocated to Menagerie, it was just a very cramped, very crowded area for an entire species to take up. And so, this bred discourse. And a majority of humanity were trying to centralize all of Faunus kind on Menagerie. We learned this from Oobleck back in Volume 1, and this led to the creation of the Faunus War. The Faunus were angry at humanity for, although granting them civil rights, still didn't treat them as first-class citizens, and gave them pretty much a crap area to settle down on and to call their own. Oobleck goes on to say that although it seems like ancient history to the children, they are relatively recent events. So given all this information, I pretty much came up with a timeline. The Great War happened 80 years ago, we know that. But then, a few decades later, the Faunus War happened. I'm guessing anywhere from 30 to 40 years ago, and I'm gonna give you reasons why later, but just keep those numbers in mind. And then we have the present day. The Faunus of Menagerie then rose up and decided to take the war onto humanity for not giving them complete, total equal rights, still treating them as second-class citizens, and for giving them a completely crappy place to live. Now, as the human race, we are prone to fight each other. But let's just pause for a moment here. The Faunus primarily wanted to go to war so that they would be treated equally, and so they would be not treated as second-class citizens anymore. But do you really think going to war over such a thing, when you want to promote that you want to be treated equally, do you think going to war is the best option? Of course, we don't know the whole details, but essentially, the Faunus then went to war with humanity, and humanity followed suit. And thus, the Faunus War, or the Faunus Rights Revolution, began. We're not sure how exactly long the Faunus War was. All we know is that the turning point was the Battle of Fort Castle 3 years into the war. So I'm guessing the war was anywhere from 4 to maybe 7 years long. And it did not end with one faction triumphing over the other. What happened at the end of the Faunus War is that a ceasefire was summoned. A ceasefire came up because this war was a complete waste of resources and life. Both sides decided to see that and acknowledge that. So they decided that they were going to lay down their arms and go back to being at peace. And so the Faunus War ended, but it left with a lot of veterans on the Faunus side of revolutionaries. A lot of veteran revolutionaries were still left alive, who probably still wanted to fight the good fight. But there were also some who strove for peace and just wanted peace. And I believe that a few of those veterans were Gira and Kali Belladonna. I believe that Blake's parents fought in the Faunus War, and it was through their actions that they were able to come to the peace agreement. And we know that the White Fang proper was birthed out of the Faunus War. And since we only know of there being ever two leaders of the White Fang, one being the current CL Khan, and the previous being Gira Belladonna. This is why I believe the Faunus War took place 20 to 40 years ago. If we look at Gira, we can tell that he is older. Perhaps older than the other adults that we have seen. He seems to have more age lines on his face. But he isn't old to the point where he's hunched over and his body is starting to break down. He's still a very competent man and is still built like a warrior, which probably comes from his fighting background during the Faunus War. But on the other hand, we don't hear about Crow, Tai Yang, Raven, or anything around that generation taking part of the war, or even mentioning the war. So that's why I believe it was just in that sweet spot where the other parents of our heroines weren't quite old enough to have taken part in the war, but it was just recent enough that Gira Belladonna did. And so the White Fang strove to bring peace between Faunus and humans. And this is where we come to Blake Belladonna, the child of the once war hero and now the leader of the White Fang, Gira Belladonna. And as we saw in Volume 1, she was there at the front of every riot, and she claims that she was born into the White Fang, which makes perfect sense due to the point that both of her parents were probably the main founders of the White Fang and were the leaders of it. So as little Blake continued to take part of her father's peaceful protest, we transition now to CL Khan. I believe CL Khan was also a veteran of the Faunus War, but unlike Gira Belladonna, CL Khan still held a grudge against humanity. CL Khan was still a revolutionary and still wanted to fight the good fight, if you will. And so CL Khan was the more violent of these two leaders of the White Fang. CL Khan probably still held prominence in the White Fang due to CL's fighting in the war. And this is where we pretty much fast forward a few years. As the White Fang continued to do their peaceful protesting, they're starting to see that their efforts aren't really going into effect. They don't seem to be sinking in, which, if you really break it down, you are doing peaceful protest, and Rome wasn't built in a day. Faunus, you're very impatient. You think change is gonna come tomorrow, when it's going to take years, if not generations, for that kind of change to come around. But I got sidetracked, so let's get back to the actual plot. As the years went on and the peaceful protests seemed to really not be making any form of advance, CL Khan started to gain more and more support within the White Fang's ranks. CL talked about how they needed to bring the revolution back, take violent action against the humans, to make them see Faunus as equals, instead of letting them see Faunus as equals. Of course, Gira always shot down these ideas, but Gira was losing support. His peaceful protests weren't doing as good as he thought they were, and more support is being put onto CL Khan. And he knew, Gira was a very smart man. He knew eventually that CL Khan would either rise to power over him or would go off on her own and take violent actions against humans in the White Fang's name. And he did not want to be held liable by someone else's actions. He had a family to take care of. He had a wife, and he had a small daughter that he knew he had to take care of. So, as we know, because Blake stated it back in Volume 1, 5 years before the events of Volume 1, Gira decided to step down as leader of the White Fang, and CL Khan was put up on top. And that is when the big change in the White Fang happened. The White Fang now became violent. They stole from trains, armed robberies, burned down shops, bad violent stuff. And this is when we finally get to Blake. Now, Blake seeing her father step down as leader of the White Fang, she was about 13 or 12 at the time. And being of that age, children think they know everything and think that they know what is best for them. She saw her father stepping down as a sign of cowardice. She saw her father as nothing but a coward bending his knee to the humans, because she essentially kind of agreed with CL Khan's point of view that they had to take more drastic action due to the fact that she had spent almost an entire decade of her life under her father's wing and seeing his peaceful protests not really make any form of advance. Blake saw this change in the White Fang as something good, but Gira, seeing the grand picture and knowing what would come out from this, knowing that it would spark another Faunus war if it elevated to such a point, he knew that it would go bad, and he knew that he had to make sure that he cut all ties with these people. This is why he is the leader of Menagerie. He wants to keep the people of Menagerie compliant, safe, and calm so they don't get wrapped up in another war with the humans, a White Fang war with the humans. And especially, he didn't want his family to get involved. He is very much a family man and cares about his daughter and wife very, very much. He argues on that issue, and he tries to make Blake see that him stepping down was the best thing to do for the family, for everyone. Blake, of course, is enraged at the fact that her father would step down from his long fight and would just give up like that. So they get into an argument, they probably yell at each other, and eventually Blake retreats to her room, away from her father. Now I want you to visualize this for a little bit. This is the first point in Blake's life where she truly runs away from her problem. She gets in an argument with her father, and she knows that she wants to be a part of this new White Fang to help try to make equality happen. She's always strove for equality, and that's perfectly fine. But right now, she thinks that the only way she can do it is joining this new radical White Fang movement. So, when Gira finally comes up to her room and opens the door, he sees her standing in front of an open window. But as he enters the room, she vanishes, because the Blake that was left behind was nothing but a shadow clone. And by the time he realizes what she's done, she's already on a ship, leaving Menagerie and going towards Vale. Isn't that just heartbreaking? I know that that's probably not how it went down, but if that is how it went down, that is totally heartbreaking on both sides. So Blake runs away from home. She does have a loving family. She loves them and they love her. They're well off. They're not scrounging for food. They're not in any real form of danger. But she wants to be a revolutionary, like her father, like her mother. She wants to bring forth peace and equality between humans and Faunus. Of course, she doesn't see the grand picture of it all, but we'll get to that in a little bit. She decides to join up with a quick rising member of the White Fang known as Adam Torres. Adam Torres is a very skilled fighter and probably holds a lot of influence in the White Fang because he has similar ideals to CL Khan. Now, a quick little backstory on Adam of what I think. I think Adam may be the offspring of two very disgruntled veterans from the Faunus War. people who, like CL Khan, still had that fire for revolution in their souls, and they pretty much passed that on to their son, and he took it to the extreme. And so now we're getting very, very close to the RWBY present day. Through the 5 years of Blake leaving her family and to the point where the black trailer happens, it is through Adam that Blake learns truly how to fight. She says that although Adam was her partner, he was also a tutor and a mentor. So he taught her a lot about the world, about the White Fang and their revolution, and about how to fight. But as they went on, she started to see a change in Adam. She started to see he started to become more violent. He didn't rightfully care if people got in the way. Destroying property and stealing property was part of the initial plan, but Adam started to take it to the extreme. He probably started killing some people, killing a few people here and there. But, you know, a few Blake could look past. It was all part of the plan. But he just kept getting worse until we finally get to the point of the black trailer, where Adam proposes to blow up the Schnee Dust Company train and destroy the contents. Blake, of course, replies with, "What about the passengers?" And Adam doesn't care about the passengers. We have to remember, the Schnee Dust Company, we know, has and does employ Faunus workers. Who is to say that there weren't Faunus workers as well as human workers on that train? Adam didn't care if there was civilian casualties, human casualties, or Faunus casualties. They were all casualties to his plan of bringing down the humans. Blake finally saw Adam for the monster that he is, and then, for the second time, ran away. Left Adam behind, left the White Fang. But what she didn't leave behind was their ideals. Now, after this, she took a rather strange turn. Did she go back to Menagerie and tell her father that she was wrong? Did she go back home to mom and dad? No, because at this point, I don't believe that she had the courage to face her family, or didn't truly believe that what she was still doing was wrong. So, she knew of the Huntsmen, and as she states in Volume 2, the Huntsmen were the most noble warriors. No, wait, she actually mentions this in Volume 1, I apologize. She says that the Huntsmen and Huntresses are the most noble warriors throughout the realm and throughout the world. And so, she would dedicate her life to being a huntsman. She also knows that there's too much inequality in the world, and someone has to stop it. And she has always fought for what she believed is right. But you see, all these questions about her, fighting inequality, fighting for what was right, becoming a huntress, the main question is why? Why is she doing this, and how is she going to accomplish this? And this is where Blake's entire plan falls apart. Blake knows what she wants. She wants to achieve equality for everyone in the world. She wants to fight for what is right. But the fact of the matter is, she knows what she wants, but she doesn't know how to get to it. She tried with the peaceful protest of the White Fang. That didn't really work. She tried it with the violent White Fang. It didn't work. And now she tried it with the Huntsmen, and once again, she saw that nothing was happening, therefore it didn't work. Now let's take a step back and ask the question, what if the Battle of Beacon never happened? What if things never went wrong? What would Blake have accomplished if she actually became a full-fledged huntsman? Nothing. She wouldn't have accomplished anything because of the bow. Blake's bow, and the fact that she hides her faunus nature, is the nail in the coffin that totally makes her entire plan for what she wants fall apart. How is she going to gain equality for the faunus if she doesn't embrace herself as a faunus herself? Now, obviously, I hear you guys saying, she wore the bow so she wouldn't be recognized as a member of the White Fang, so that she wouldn't be seen as a criminal. But she wore the bow in the black trailer. She fought a lot with the bow on her head and didn't even tell anyone, even when she entered the Huntsman Academy, that she was a Faunus. The only people who knew she was a Faunus was Team RWBY, Team Juniper, and Ozpit. If she would have become a full-fledged huntress, how would she be showing that the Faunus are good and fight for justice for everyone, not just for themselves, if she hid behind that bow? The point I'm getting to is, what was Blake trying to accomplish with trying to become a huntress, hiding her Faunus-ness, and trying to gain equality for Faunus kind? How does all that add up to her grand plan of gaining equality? It doesn't. And this is why I started this theory with talking about the Faunus War. The Faunus War was born of revolutionaries, and the majority of Faunus kind has stayed in the revolutionary mindset ever since. Many Faunus know what they want, but they do not know how to achieve it. Of course, some choose the violent way and the road to war, but that will not change the world. You're just going to replace one dictatorship for another, or you're just going to be squashed under humanity's boot. Or, who knows, maybe you'll all get killed off by Grimm. The only true Faunus that saw the grand plan, that saw what the road of destruction led to, and knew what to do in relation to Faunus and humans, was Gira Belladonna, the one that strove for peace, the one that strove for equal grounds, the slow but true way. The only way equality is going to be gained is through peace. If you try to equivalate it through violence, you're going to have a lot of angry people looking at you if you're the victor, and even if you're the defeated. And so this is why Blake is now returning to Menagerie. She now realizes that she does not have a plan. She has a goal, but no plan. Not only does she want to make recompense with her parents, but she wants to ask her father for aid. She wants her father to aid her in her quest to gain Faunus equality. And if any person is going to be able to get Gira back into the fight, it's going to be his own daughter. In conclusion, Blake is a very smart character, but it's strange that one of the smartest characters in the show doesn't see the big picture of her goal. She doesn't have a plan to get to those goals. She doesn't know the road that she has to take to get to her goal. She has always been a starry-eyed revolutionary that only sees the end of the road, but doesn't see the slog in the mud and the dirt and the dust that it takes to get to the end of the road. Blake has lived her life trying anything to get to the end of that road, whether that be joining the Huntsmen or taking part in the violent White Fang. But I believe her visit with her parents and finally going back to Menagerie is a step in the right direction. She's starting to see the road that it's going to take to get to the end, to get to her goal. She's starting to see it, and that right there is character development. That's healthy character development. And finally, I want to end this video on this note. Why Blake left her team. She did not leave her team out of spite or out of hate. What she did is left her team because she knew the road that she was going to be going on was going to be a hard one, full of danger, and she didn't want any more of her friends to be caught up in that danger. I see her very much like Frodo Baggins from Lord of the Rings. At that moment, when Frodo has to decide to leave the Fellowship of the Ring behind and take his journey to Mordor alone, because he knows that the road's going to be dangerous. He knows that the ring is starting to tear people apart and plant seeds in their minds. The reason Frodo left is because he loved his friends so much, he wanted to keep them safe by taking himself out of the picture. And that was what Blake was really trying to do. Like the Fellowship of the Ring, if any of her friends had actually been there when she was leaving, they would have gone with her, or at least convinced her to stay. And she knew that. That's why she took off when everyone was in comatose, knocked out from injury, or taken away by their father. But, unfortunately, when Blake Samwise decides to show up, in Lord of the Rings, when Samwise Gamgee shows up and tells Frodo that he's coming with Frodo, no matter what, Frodo knows that he can't stop Sam, and decides to take him along, even though Sam knows that the end of the road is that the road's going to be a difficult one. However, when Sun shows up for Blake, she doesn't see it as a blessing. She slaps him in the face. She sees him coming after her as something bad, rather than embracing him as a true friend and being grateful that he cares so much. She only sees him as an annoyance and a nuisance. Sun Wukong and Samwise Gamgee, in their appropriate stories, are the somewhat foil of the main character. The main character is very melancholy. They know that they probably won't make it back from their journey, and know their journey is going to be bad. But it's Samwise and Sun that say, well, tomorrow might be better. You know, we're going to go there and back again. You know, everything's going to be fine. I'm going to save food for the return journey. You see, it's those companions that stick with you through thick and thin and keep that good attitude are what gets you to the end of the journey. And now that Blake knows about the road that she has to take and how difficult it's going to be, all she needs to do now is realize the friend that's been sitting next to her the whole time. But hey, those are just my thoughts, and the real question is now, what do you think? Hey everybody out there, thanks for watching this RWBY theory. It was a theory long in the making. I had this idea way back like when episode 5 came out of volume 4, and it just took me this long to get it done. And it was originally filmed I think around 2 weeks ago, I think on the 8th of December. So a lot of what's talking about in this theory has kind of been confirmed with the newest episode 7 of RWBY Volume 4. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed nonetheless. Be sure to like and favorite if you did. Subscribe, of course, if you feel inclined to. Check out some other videos that I've done, RWBY related or not. And be sure to check out social media pages, links down in the description. Big thanks to all my Patreon sponsors. You guys are awesome. I love you all. And I'll see you guys next time I'm out there in YouTube land. Be a good person, tip your waitresses, keep moving forward. I'll see you then. Yeah.